PodcastAcademyOnline.com, built for the busy entrepreneur. Their podcast becomes a marketing, a branding tool. Podcast Academy Online is where you learn to imagine, develop, launch a podcast at your own pace. PodcastAcademyOnline.com. Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. This podcast was created for the boomer woman leaving corporate, and now you're looking to reinvent yourself, become an author, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. Well, each episode will leave you with clarity. You will come away with the yes, I can and yes, I will reinvent myself mindset. So come on, let's do this. I'm your host, Margo Lovett. Hello, everyone. It's Margo Lovett, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Well, the calendar is telling us that Black History Month for 2021 is past, but as a podcaster, I beg to differ, and I do have the right to make sure that I bring you the conversations that move the needle, that make you say, oh, yeah. The conversations that are going to enlighten you, make you aware of the men and women, the African American men and women that we should know. They very well could be our neighbors. And as far as I'm concerned, there are so many marvelous contributions. There are so many rich stories to bring to you until I could tell these stories probably 4 or 5 times a day and not scratch the surface. So with that said, I'm going to kick off, and yeah, I know it's March. We are going into Women's Month, International Women's History Month. And yes, I am in total deep dive commitment to bring to you 25 women that are, oh my goodness, they are history makers in their own right. They are women of influence. Some women you know, some you don't know, but you need to know, you need to follow because their footprint in print and digital has run deep for some time, not a few days, but for some time. But I say all that to say, the only reason why I'm able to collaborate and bring this marvelous recognition to these women is because after 26 years, I quit a corporate job, a job that kept a roof over my head, that helped me raise my daughter, that helped me buy a home, that helped me buy 2 new cars. I could go on and on and on, that equipped me with customer service skills, that equipped me with skills of empathy as a leader, that definitely set me up in leadership. And I could go on and on and on. But after 26 years, it was time to depart on my own volition, and I did so, took a year off, and then I returned to my hobby, which was podcasting. Went to Prince George's County, hired the best and the most brilliant podcaster and entrepreneur that I could find because he was doing exactly what I wanted to do. Had never really seen the big picture and the magnitude of podcasting, but all I knew was that innately I wanted to be a powerful podcaster, and I wanted to position myself to be ready to help those women coming out of corporate or already out of corporate and ready to reinvent themselves to become, yes, a podcaster, an entrepreneur, an author. Big deal visions for so many of us. Where do we start? And yes, how much is this going to cost me? Who do I connect with to make sure that this meets a measure of success? And when I don't think that I am enough, how do I get back on track? These are questions that came up for me, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to create a podcast with how-to instruction, information, and so much inspiration until, my goodness, it's just brimming over, everything brimming over. And when you mix it all together, it is a wonderful place to be, to hear that others have done what you want to do. And they come from the same boots that you come from, or the same roots that you come from, or the same neighborhood that you come from, or the same mindset that you come from, or the same want to, the wish, the desire that you come from, and they have done it. And at the end of the day, these are things that I've done. So I needed to make sure that I had a firm, formidable, sustainable platform built for women and, yeah, for men who are seeking this very niched down boomer community. So that's what I did. And early on in the formation of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, we went to all major networks, iHeartRadio, we went to Spotify, we went to, uh, of course, Apple, and I went to a network. I became part of a group of, podcasts because it was going to be excellent exposure. And little did I know it was going to really be proof of concept for me. So I went over to Burkhay Bashani Radio, which was the best thing that I could have done. The creator, the founder of that awesome network, Mr. Benny Randall Jr., created that because he said he loves talk radio. And yes, it is hard to find good talk radio. So he created it out of necessity. And I could relate to that. I created Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation out of necessity. I wanted everything up under one umbrella. So I go over there, and very early in being a part of the network, Mr. Randall was very kind. He told me that he loved the podcast. He gave it room to grow, and he would listen every week. So we were over there, what, 2 months, 3 months? And he always categorized where each podcast fell as far as listeners. And when his new network reached the over 2 million downloads, then I was in the top four and was sustainably there, always in the top five. But you know me, I'm very competitive. I always wanted to be in the top four. But when that network went over 2 million downloads and my podcast was in the top four, then I knew I had proof of concept. I knew that I had thousands. I was in that thousands. I was in that millions of downloads. And that was proof of concept that I will take to my grave and forever be grateful to Bashani Verke Radio for letting me have that proof of concept, confidence, and reaching more people than I ever thought that I could. So you're probably saying, Margo, why aren't you there any longer? It was time for me to move because I had to learn how to edit. I had to learn how to stand on my own. And I guess I could have stayed there, but I had to learn how to do all facets of podcasting so that I could open up podcastacademyonline.com. Since I've fallen in love with podcasting, I read about podcasting each and every day, and I understand and am able to answer the questions of boomers. Some people don't, we hear about a podcast, but we don't really know what a podcast is. When we hear subscribe, okay, how much is it? That type of thing. I mean, down to those minute questions, and I have the answers for folks who are there. And I want them to bring their businesses into podcasting because, we all had to pivot during COVID. And some people made it the leap over, some people didn't. I want them to know that the world is waiting for their expertise. As boomers, we know a lot and we know a lot of people, but we just need to know how to put all this together so it's relevant and it means something to our listeners. We just need structure. And yeah, we need somebody to hold us accountable because so many pressures come. We've had to deal with the pandemic. Some of us have caught COVID just like I did. How do you navigate through this life and build out a sustainable podcast that can later you can generate funds from it, at least make it sustainable and it can pay for itself. It can be a marketing tool for our business. It can project our voice and what we stand for and our mission, even as we sleep. This is a global thing. What podcast festivals do I go to so that I can join in with the global conversation? I have information about that. And that's why I built podcastacademyonline.com. Is it just for boomers? No, it isn't. But I have made sure that it is a atmosphere where we come together. And in 7 weeks, you have had these big questions answered, and you have time to be heard, and you have time to create your podcast the way you envisioned it, the way it is. You are not going to be tired of that podcast this time next year. So, the same way that I built Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, it is that structure that I put into building out your podcast. And you embellish it with your tone and your swag and your way. The structure is the same. You're just putting up your pictures, you're just decorating it, you are just creating it after your own personality, after your audience, but it's sustainable. I've graduated some students and I am so very happy about that. So I am Margo Lovett, Her Business, the creator and the host, founder of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, podcastacademyonline.com. It is my mission to make sure that especially boomers understand how to reinvent themselves, become authors, entrepreneurs, how to become, yes, podcasters. I stay in my wheelhouse. Do I know everything about entrepreneurship? Heck no. But I know a lot of people who can get you on the right foot. Do I know a lot about graphics and all those things that go into forming your podcast? No, I'm not a graphic artist. I do a pretty good job on Canva, but I'm going to refer you to people who are going to help you build your team. Because what I found when you are building out a podcast, it indeed is a business and you need a team. Yes, out the gate, you need a CPA. You need an attorney. Yeah, you do. Think about it. You need a CPA because you're going to go ahead and start claiming that office space. You're going to start claiming all kinds of things, and the IRS is going to be on you. Speaking from what I know, you're going to need an attorney because you want to make sure that your guest release is intact, that it crosses all 50 states. It's viable. It covers everything that you need for it to cover. And I found out that it's different for every podcast. If you are hosting, if you are co-hosting a podcast, you need a contract. So you need a CPA. You need a attorney. You need a graphic artist. And yeah, you need somebody who's going to be able to edit video and audio for you. Right out the gate, you need to have these relationships because things are going to come up and you're going to need those relationships. These are things that you don't necessarily know, but I teach these things in the academy. You see, I learned how to podcast. I learned how to build a sustainable, monetized podcast that you can monetize with. And I also learned how to build from the inside out. I learned how to build when you're scared. I learned how to podcast when you are afraid of going after the big fish. Am I enough? Do I know enough? Am I studied enough? I I know how to podcast from the inside out. And when big things and awesome things happen, and they really, really do celebrate, podcasting from the inside out is how to position yourself internally so that you are positioned to form these wonderful collaborations that you didn't even see coming, but you positioned yourself in body, in spirit, and in mind so that you could be, you know what you bring to the table and you run to these opportunities. So I'm Margo Lovett. That's what I'm all about. And the next conversation that I'm going to bring up to you is one that I had with Kalita N. Lloyd Esquire. She does bring forth the conversations in society that we all must have. It's not enough to talk about racism and diversity once a year in corporate America or in our churches every once in a while. Until we see some real headline, we have to make sure that the professionals come in and they facilitate these conversations. That's just how I see it. And I'm going to bring, this weekend, I'm going to bring forth her conversation the conversation that I had with her. And then Sunday, I'm going to bring the conversation that I had with Casey Grant, fascinating woman who was one of the first flight attendants in these United States. And I love what she says. Dr. King fought for equality on the ground, and we fought for equality in the sky. And Casey Grant is going on to write her second book. She's looking for all flight attendants who really were in that fight. She wants asking that you reach out to her wherever you are globally, and she wants to have a conversation with you. She's all about aviation in the early days, making sure that people are aware of that population, the contributions that were made to Black history. So that's what's coming up. You know a little bit more about me. That's what's coming up in on Monday on this weekend here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. In the meantime, wash your hands, stay safe, and if you want to learn more about podcasting, you want to become a podcaster, it's now your time. Then drop me an email at Margo at MargoloVett.com or go over to my website, MargoLovett.com, and reach out to me. Let's have a conversation, all right? All right. Bye-bye now. I want to thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Couple of things that I want you to do right now. Go to my website, pick up a copy of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to international show host, author, and speaker in 1 year. Number 2, please freely listen to each and every episode. Share them out with your family, friends, the men in your lives. And then number 3, get in contact with me, one of the experts that have been on the show, because I want to make sure that you reinvent yourself. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation.